Hey everybody, it's Joe from greenlightsound.com, and in today's episode we're going to take a look at the Abbey Road Saturator from Abbey Road Studios, an emulation from Wave's brand new plugin that just came out as of December 2019. So this is trying to capture the saturation and distortion sound of the EMI TG12321 compander being driven into either a red or TG12345 console. The red console being a tube console, or what they call a valve console in England, and a TG12345 being a solid state console. The TG12321, this compander section, was originally designed to eliminate tape hiss. That's what its original intention was for. A compander, that word, is a compressor and expander. On the way in, it compresses the signal. On the way out, it expands the signal. And that gets rid of tape hiss in the recordings back then. So the compander was first built by EMI in 1964, and the EMI engineers found that if you ran the signal through the input only, if you just encode the signal, do the compression only, but you don't decode, you get a high frequency boost or some nice sparkle added to it. So that's what this does. This was used famously by Jeff Emmerich on certain instruments by the Beatles, like the piano in the Beatles' Lovely Rita from Sgt. Pepper. Waves have also added some controls that aren't found on the original hardware, like a crossover frequency control and a blend fader so you can mix the effect in. The compander is also used to excite the signal. It's an exciter, basically, before it's sent to the saturator. So just a quick overview of the controls. The input allows for plus or minus 24 dB of gain. The input light right up here, if it's a green or yellow, it shows a healthy signal being fed into the saturator, into the plugin. If it's red, it shows that it's starting to clip. You can run in stereo mode or mid-side mode if you want the mid or side only to be saturated. The small input knob here is if you're in MS mode, mid-side mode. So if you're in, for example, just messing with the side signals here, this is the input signal for the side signal only, or the input signal for the mid signal only, independent of the full plugin input here. But we're working in stereo right now. After that, in the signal flow, we go right down to the pre-EQ. It's a 3-band EQ that filters the signal before it enters the compander. You've got a low shelf, plus or minus 36 dB, and that shelf is set at 200 hertz. You've got a bell filter in the middle. You can do plus or minus 18 dB. You got a bandwidth Q control, and this runs anywhere from 40 hertz all the way up to 10K. Fully sweepable in that middle range. And then finally a high shelf, plus or minus 36 dB at 2,550 hertz or 2.55K. Then we go into the actual compander section. So what this does is it compresses the pre-EQ signal, passes it through a low and high pass filter, then expands it. It really excites the signal. The phase switch right up here can significantly affect the character of the tone, so you can experiment with that as you're using it. The ratio, this is a little bit confusing for some people. The ratio here sets which frequencies will be compressed and enhanced. So at lower settings, lower sounds are clipped and compressed. At higher settings, higher sounds are clipped and compressed. The high and low pass filters here set the bandwidth range of the compander, so default setting providing the maximum bandwidth of the compander. Of course, a blend fader right here, traditional mix knob, but it's on a fader, blending that compander signal in or out. For the saturator section, we can choose between the TG desk or the Red 17 desk. So the TG desk was developed in 1969, a solid state console. It's got a warmer, rounder sound. The Red 17 desk is a tube console first developed in the 1950s and has a more aggressive character to its saturation. It's also notable that Waves makes emulations of a channel of the TG desk and the Red desk, 3 variations of the Red desk, not just the 17. So if you want to not just use the saturation, but actually run the whole Red channel or TG channel, Waves offers that TG12345 and the Red 17, 37, and 51, I think, are the 3 models of the Red desk it has. You can also turn the saturator completely off by turning this screw over here. And below that, we've got our mix fader on the saturator. The post EQ has the same exact 3-band EQ settings that came on the pre-EQ right over here, but the post EQ filters the signal after all the processing is done. Again, the same filter controls as before. The output, of course, sets the output level. One thing that's behind the scenes on this plugin is there's an output limiter included set to -0.9 dB so that signal won't clip the DAW as it's leaving the plugin here. And this LED indicator, it's a limiter activity indicator. So now that I've explained most of the controls, we're going to hear it on a source now. Let's hear just a drum mix. I'm going to bypass the plugin. So this is just the raw drum sound without the Abbey Road Saturator engaged. When you load the plugin in its default state, the saturation is pretty aggressive and the compander is pretty aggressive as well. It gets really bright. Here it is in its default setting. So definitely overly bright. What I'd like to do to affect that is first dial back the ratio here so we're not affecting so many high-end signals. I'm going to mix the blend in to taste on this compander. So what I basically did there is dialed in the blend till I got the brightness I wanted from the compander, but not really overly bright. I brought that ratio down again to make sure the high frequencies weren't too over affected. I kind of messed around with the saturator settings, how much gain I was using and what desk I was using. I noticed that I liked the sort of crunch I'm getting out of the red console, but it sucked a lot of the low end of the kick drum out of the mix. And you can easily make up for that with the post EQ. I just gave it a little boost on that low end and I brought it all back in. So I'm going to engage the plugin, bypass the plugin back and forth so you can hear the effect on and off. I still don't like how much of that low end's being sucked out. So what I can do now is use the bell filter, set it down here at 40 Hertz, kind of a tight Q. That allows me to retain some of that low end even with the saturation on. Of course, I could bring the mix knob down again. Bypass. There we go. That's some nice saturation happening there, and the kick end, or the kick drum and the low end is not being completely obliterated. So I'm going to move over to the bass part. I'll get the plugin engaged on the bass part. So what I'd like to do is not even use the compander section yet and focus just on the saturator to see what kind of saturation we get from the TG desk first and the red desk second. I really like how both those desks fatten up that bass part. Now, one of the tricks I like to do with the red console emulation is to kind of drive a bass part really hard into that red console to get the saturation out of the plugin, out of the channel strip plugin. But I can kind of do the same thing with this. Let's blend in some of this compander. The signal's really hot coming out, so I'm going to bring the output down. I really like what that's doing. It's sort of evening the bass part out, and that saturation is really nice on bass. Next thing I want to do is hear it on some lead vocals. So instead of messing with my settings here, what I'd like to do is go through some of the presets. So I'm going to go straight to the artist presets here and go down. First, what's Dave Darlington have? Let's take a look at vocal stressor. Here it is, dry, no saturator engaged.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and training wheels
and saturator engaged.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and
back and forth.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and training wheels and
you can hear a little bit of that saturation coming in, but really the compander is what I'm hearing brighten the vocal up. Let's try a different preset for vocals. I'm going to move down to Dave Pensato. He's got vocal enhance.
I need you, my blank check.
Off.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and training wheels and I cash you just to get by every day.
So just a little sparkle on that vocal from that one. Let's take a look at another preset. We'll do vocal focus.
I need you, my blank check.
Without.
I need you, my blank check.
Listen especially for that upper mid-range enhancement.
I need you, my blank check.
Couple more. Let's go down here. See if we get another vocal one. Vocal bite.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and training wheels.
Now, if the effect's too much, you can always just take these blend knobs and bring those down.
I need you, my blank check.
And bring it into taste.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and training wheels and
here's the red death saturation full blast.
I need you, my blank check, sugar pills and training wheels and
that would be a really nice distorted vocal to bring in parallel. Nice. So the next element, we're going to hear it on synthesizer. Here is a bunch of layered synths, no Abbey Road saturator engaged. If I bring the Abbey Road saturator on, I can already tell the synths are going to benefit from that compander being dialed in. So let's try that first. I'm going to bring this down. Without. Yeah, that really brings the synth part to life. So if you've got an element in a mix that sounds dull and uninteresting, this is a great tool to sort of bring out that upper mid-range bite, that presence that allows it to poke through the mix. You can obviously overdo it. You can have some really harsh sounding sounds come out of this plugin, but with some easy manipulation, bringing down that blend, changing the ratio so you're not affecting so much of the upper range frequencies and just dialing it into taste and using your EQ after to sculpt things. The pre-EQ to drive things into the saturation and compander, and the post-EQ to sculpt it afterwards, you can achieve some really great sounds. So there it is, the Abbey Road Saturator from Abbey Road Studios and Waves. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in the next one.